Well, welcome tonight. It is exciting to be here with you all, and we are so excited to invite you inside our red doors. My name is Carl Chan, and I am the Associate Director of Strategic Partnerships here at the Bowery Mission, and I'm joined tonight by our CEO, James Winans.
Hey, Carl. Hello, everyone. So glad you're here with us tonight, standing with us and with the people we serve here at the Bowery Mission.
I look forward to having a chat. I mean, we recognize that this has been quite a year for some of us, right? I know that some of us may have faced a few more curveballs than others, but many of you I know would have wanted to be down here with us, serving our community, which is your community as well, but you haven't been able to do so. So this holiday season, we wanted to make sure we were able to bring the Bowery Mission to you, right? We find ourselves in this new abnormal. Right? We can feel that there is rhythm again in what we're doing, but things are not back to the same normal that we once knew. And do you know what? That's okay. Through it all, we've still been able to fulfill our mission and purpose to provide hope and restoration and help to those that need it the most. So, James, thank you for having a chat with me tonight. I know many of the supporters on this call are interested to hear, one, what has the Bowery Mission been doing? Two, what is still needed to be done. And I know many have written questions that we're going to work through. We've compiled them on, but if you feel like you have another question right now, enter it in the Q&A section. If you're on Zoom or in the chat, if you're on Facebook, and we'll try to get to it.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I'm so glad to be joining you for this conversation. And I am inside the red doors. I'm here in our historic chapel, built in 1909, and many of you know the Bowery Mission's doors have stayed open for almost 150 years now, and it's quite a legacy.
It is indeed. And look, we're here in the beginning of December. I cannot believe that is already 2 weeks since Thanksgiving Day, right? People have been asking us, what was that like, planning to have a Thanksgiving gathering celebration in the midst of a pandemic?
Yeah, well, some folks said that maybe this couldn't be done, and I'm so proud of our team for getting it done. This was the Bowery Mission's 141st Thanksgiving celebration, and we celebrated at five of the Bowery Mission's campuses. Much of the attention was drawn here to the Bowery campus, and you see pictures here of the tents outside of the Bowery campus, where when we arrived in the morning, it was downpouring rain, but the skies cleared. We were able to serve delicious food to our community in these to-go containers, as you see there in the picture, as well as provide other practical help. And then our guests were able to go around the corner onto Rivington Street and experience live music and a socially distanced, safe outdoor dining area. And so we wanted to create a space that was safe and also communicated dignity and love to our guests, so that they had a place to sit and eat their meal. You know, as people waited online for a meal, our Chief Program Officer, Cheryl Mitchell, was out on the line, and she was letting people know, you know, it's about 10 minutes from here to the meal area, and you'll pick up a meal. You'll also receive some gifts from the Bowery Mission in the form of winter items, that sort of thing. And then if you want to go around the corner to Rivington, there's a place to sit and eat and enjoy the meal. And this person, you know, waiting outdoors on a line for a meal, looked at Cheryl and said, you know what, the Bowery Mission's always looking out for us, but you're always looking for one way to make it better. And I just thought that was a beautiful summation of the day, a summary of the day, and a story of something that you all make possible by your support. That not only are you providing that care and that service, but you're allowing the Bowery Mission to find that one way to make things better for our neighbors. I want to thank you too. You know, Thanksgiving Day now in the US is followed by Giving Tuesday. So we have Thanksgiving Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then it's Giving Tuesday, a day of giving back. And we had a great Thanksgiving Tuesday fundraiser. I want to thank you for helping us reach our goal of matching $50,000 in giving and allowing those dollars to double the impact for our neighbors in need.
Well, I mean, that sounds incredible. Thanksgiving, over 1,500 meals were served that day But what does every other day look like? What is our new abnormal, so to speak? And if you walk through our red doors today, James, what would you see?
As many of you may already know, from the onset of the pandemic, really in March, the Bowery Missions had to modify much of our services, much of our programs, doing some of that really overnight, and then constantly improving how we were doing things. We needed to create physical distance. We needed to move some of our services outdoors. We needed to de-densify our shelter spaces. We have all this new vocabulary to talk about COVID. But our focus areas are pretty simple. You know, first of all, we knew that we needed to provide life-sustaining meals. At the Bowery Mission, we say it all begins with a meal. And so on March 16th, we took what was happening inside our dining hall, around tables, community, hot food served on a cafeteria line, and we started packaging those meals to go so that we could distribute them safely outdoors. We did that without interruption. We didn't miss a day of providing meals. And we saw the number of guests swell to double the number of people we were used to serving. As people were laid off of work, furloughed, we're trying to figure out where to find emergency food for the first time, and somebody pointed them to the Bowery Mission. And you know, we became concerned about where is all this food going to come from. You know, at the Bowery Mission, we don't buy food. We receive donated food, and we prepare it for our guests. And I just feel like God has provided at every step of the way for us, that there's always been enough. And where it's come from has changed over time, but there's always been enough. 225,000 meals since the onset of the pandemic. Second area of focus was really the hygiene needs that were so critical. We're telling folks to stay clean, and yet the places where people would wash up informally, at the bathroom at the library, at the bathroom at Starbucks, at the rec center, wherever, those places were not available and are still not available. And that's why we found a vital partner, so that we could offer showers outdoors in a modified van, private shower units, and provide clean clothes. We've also provided hand washing stations. And since March, we've had toilets publicly available on the Bowery because there are so few other places to use the restroom in our neighborhood. On average, right now, we're providing about 100 folks with emergency showers a week in that modified shower van. And then thirdly, our residential programs remained open. 5 locations where we have people staying with us overnight. And we wanted to make sure that our residents were experiencing a season of growth, not a season of stagnancy and despair. And so we figured out how to do counseling and classes and do them safely in person or do them virtually online. And I'm so grateful to report the question I get all the time: have you had a lot of cases? We have had positive cases at the Bowery Mission, but we have not had any community spread of the illness. And we pray that that continues through this winter season. So that's over 65,000 nights of safe shelter that you've provided by your generosity. And finally, we continue to support children and families. We, as you know, have city camp programs in East Harlem and the South Bronx. And these kids continue to participate in enrichment activities now online. At a time when it's so vital to these families. 75% of the families we serve have lost employment during this pandemic. 75%, 3 out of every 4 families. And so not only have we provided enrichment for the kids, but we've also provided some direct cash support to these families who so desperately need it. So those have been our focus areas, Carl.
Just a few, might I add. So, I mean, it's incredible. As we look back now, 9 months on, the impact that we were able to do with partner supporters like you who are on this call today. James, what would you say would be one story during COVID that has really stuck with you? Something that maybe encourages you, inspires you, something that anchors you and keeps you moving forward throughout all the uncertainty?
Yeah, I think a story that really anchors me happened in that first week in March. We knew there was a pandemic. We weren't shut down yet. We were serving meals indoors. And we had a reporter come on site and sit down with one of our meal guests, somebody who was experiencing homelessness. And the reporter said, how do you expect the coronavirus to change your life? And our male guest thought about it for a moment, and he said, I don't expect the coronavirus to change my life at all. In fact, people already treat me like I have a virus just because I'm homeless. And so as New York shut down and we were telling everybody to stay at home, and we weren't acknowledging that thousands of New Yorkers had no home to go to, it just became incumbent upon us as the Bowery Mission imperative that we would be prioritizing folks without a home. And I'm so proud of our staff who have served as essential workers throughout this whole pandemic without missing a day. And I want to acknowledge the supporters on this call because I know many of you have given out of a place of scarcity or fear or lack, and yet you know there's somebody else who needs the help more than you do. We received many $1,200 donations in the spring and summer. And the reason was that people were receiving a stimulus check and they knew somebody else needed that check more than you did, perhaps. And so you sent it into the Bowery Mission. I want to say thank you.
Absolutely. Every little bit counts and really adds up to make a huge, significant difference. James, what does the future hold? Many people are wondering for the Bowery Mission, for the state of homelessness, the crisis that we're trying to address in this city. And so I guess this question is very open-ended. So let me frame it a bit for you. The summer, now into the fall, New York City began to buzz again with a bit of life. Traffic returned to the streets, but we recognize that there's a state of eviction order that will end on the 1st of Jan. Some advocates would estimate that would render about 50,000 individuals either homeless or displaced from their current residence. There are reports that indicate that a significant percentage of New Yorkers have not been paying rent as far back as April or May. And so, we notice now in these days that there are slowly more and more restrictions creeping back, not just in New York City, around the country. What are we doing, or what can we do to prepare for this worst case scenario?
Yeah, well, I think, as you point out, Carl, the pandemic just highlighted the inequalities that already existed in our city, in a city where a quarter of New Yorkers were already paying more than half of their income in rent. People were already living on a razor's edge, and now that is exacerbated by a pandemic. Shockingly, 1 out of every 100 babies born in New York City last year was brought home from the hospital to a shelter. Families were already struggling. And now 1 in 7 New Yorkers has had their employment disrupted this year. Over 1 1/4 New Yorkers in this pandemic have had their job, lost a job, at least for a period of time. And so this crisis is really unequally impacting New Yorkers. It's highlighting the economic, the racial disparities in our city. And our job isn't done. Our job is not done. The vaccine is here, but vaccination takes time. And so as we're all experiencing, we're going into a very challenging time with this pandemic. So we're not going to rush back indoors. We are opening up indoor spaces more and more here in the winter so that people can get out of the cold. But we're going to continue to offer these services with your help through the winter.
I think that is a true sobering reality of, one, the crisis of homelessness and how unequally it is affecting the most vulnerable of our neighbors at this time. And so it really underlies the urgency of the situation, right? But we have a chance to change that. We're deep in the middle of our holiday season. How can we offer hope to people at this time? James, if you could recount, you spent many a Christmas at the Bowery Mission. What are some of your favorite moments at the Bowery Mission during this holiday season?
Yeah, well, I think of a couple. I don't know if they're on the call, but there's a couple that comes into the Bowery Mission at each holiday and makes sure that our tables are dressed and decorated, that maybe there's some things hanging on the wall, that there's music, and And you know, this family, I think, reflects the heart that a lot of us have, that you know, we want folks who are marginalized, folks who are isolated, folks who are homeless, to experience things that are festive and decorative and beautiful, and a sense of belonging and love and respect. And so even in these kind of socially distanced times, we are trying to create these festive moments for all of our guests. Our men are gathering right now here at the Bowery campus to celebrate Christmas tonight, and I look forward to greeting them after this call is over, because it's just so important to create spaces of community right now.
I think that's true, and I know many right now are just trying to figure out what does this holiday season look like for themselves, let alone for others. I know many would have, for the first time, not been able to visit their own family. And, you know, are there instances we're able to provide hope to create this sort of family within our community here to make sure that they are loved?
Yeah, I think in some ways we are all more isolated than we want to be right now. You know, I think this will be the first Christmas that I don't spend with my parents. And yet, you know, some people are more isolated than others. Some don't have a family connection at all right now. Those family ties have been severed. Those bridges have been burned. For whatever reason, there's estrangement, and so we want to create those kind of family-like connections here at the Bowery Mission, for those who are in residence with us, for those who are walking up for a meal, for those who are coming for a shower. We want folks to know that they're part of a community, that they're loved and respected. And you know, I think it's important we all keep in mind, as we're perhaps feeling isolated from our family in this holiday season, that for us this is a momentary inconvenience, and we can think about how heart-wrenching that is in some cases. But many of our guests have not had the opportunity to see family for months and years, if at all. And so all the more important that we care for those folks right now.
I agree. And I love what you said earlier. Sometimes all it needs is a meal to spark a little bit of hope, or addressing a felt need to begin to build a relationship. So at this point now where hope is critical, and while the city may have been on pause, you know, I know that we have not as an organization. You mentioned this is one of the few times where we were recognized, albeit a bit late, that we are all essential workers here, and the city finally recognized that. And every client of ours has their own unique story. And as they progress onwards to their journey of independent living, their lives themselves become a beacon of hope. I think I'm reminded about one brave woman in our long-term women's program called Clarabelle. James, can you share Clarabelle's story with us?
I can, and I think just want to mention here, Carl, that you know, the Bowery Mission not only hasn't stopped serving, but we haven't stopped welcoming folks through the red doors for help. And today there are over 120 people who've entered our residential programs during this pandemic, who were homeless at the beginning of the pandemic, and they have stories like this woman Clarabelle, you know, originally from Puerto Rico. Clarabelle got married at 19 to someone in the military, moved upstate for the first time when she was 20. She didn't speak any English at that point in her life, but she overcame that language barrier, and she actually completed a degree in psychology and began working in the nonprofit sector. After some time, her husband didn't re-enlist in the service, and so they moved to New York City to improve their job prospects. And as unfortunately happens with many marriages, their marriage did not last. But she continued to thrive. She got her master's degree, continued to pursue that career in human services, helping others, her deep passion to help others. She was living with a roommate, and when that roommate decided that she no longer wanted Clarabelle as a roommate. Clarabelle was not able to find the next place. She became homeless. And she says to us, you know, anybody is just that one paycheck away. And unless you've been able to save enough money to get you through a hardship like that, you're just one paycheck away from being on the streets. And now Clarabelle knew this, and COVID has shown us this, how fragile our places of control and comfort can be. So Clarabelle is now homeless. She runs into a former client of hers on the streets. Incredible story. He led her to an encampment, a place where people stayed together on the streets, and she stayed there for 3 days. And then this client of hers, from her time in doing social work, was connected her to the Bowery Mission at our Tribeca emergency shelter. She got to the emergency shelter. She was scared. She had no idea what to expect. She was warmly embraced there. And she says this, what these guys do at the Bowery Mission is the impossible. They make it possible. And she found it so strange, so shocking to be now a client when she was used to being staff. She was immediately struck. She moved from our emergency shelter to our women's center. She was immediately struck by how beautiful that home was. She felt safe. She felt like she could rebuild trust with people there because of how the staff was interacting with her. She felt like she could trust people for the first time in years. She says to sit down with any of the staff and trust them is a huge leap. You know, these are strangers. It's part of my healing and my evolution to trust strangers. But I was shut off for 5 years. I didn't have a meaningful relationship. So now to be forming healthy and safe friendships is part of my journey to something better. Clarabelle's thriving again. She has recently gotten 2 OSHA certifications, you know, to help organizations implement health and safety plans. This is a growth area, as you can imagine. And she's continued the journey also as an artist. And this is part of her healing journey, is to participate in art, and her art communicates about finding redemption and renewal in God. And she expresses it this way: when you're going through this moment in time, you are going to feel depression. You're going to feel extreme sadness or frustration, but this is not where I need to be. I think we can all relate to this right now. But I think the best way for me to understand this time and to internalize it is this: the first book of who I was, all those experiences, ended the moment I came to the Bowery. Because now at the Bowery, there's not just a new chapter, there's a new book. And that includes recovery, emotional recovery, spiritual recovery. It includes all of the sadness. You can still feel it, but now in the light of God.
Well, James, I think that is a powerful story, and just one of the tens, if not hundreds, of stories every year that come out through the Bowery Mission, of lives transformed, while one of hope as well really highlights that the face of homelessness now during this pandemic is not necessarily the face that you would expect. Like, we cannot and we must not put a face on homelessness. I think COVID-19 has really exacerbated this crisis. So for every interaction that we have, or that you have with someone on the streets, or who is struggling with homelessness, you know, that interaction you have that is positive, that is welcoming, that is loving, it could be the very spark that of hope that someone needs at this time to enter and engage in a journey of restoration. I think it is incredibly powerful to recognize that every individual story has not been finished, and we have an opportunity to play a part in that. So thank you for sharing, James. Right now we have time to take a few live questions. I know a couple have been answered. We've got some right now as well. James, are you ready?
Yes.
Great. What is our greatest need?
Well, it seems cliche to say it, but it is so true that financial donations allow us to be flexible in a pandemic to meet new needs and to respond to our neighbors who so desperately need help. And so December is always a critical time for us. These next 3 weeks are absolutely critical to help us carry forward our plans for 2021, whatever it brings. And so I'm so grateful to so many on the call who've already sacrificed, who've already made that financial donation. I know some of those who are participating tonight are making that decision for year end, and I thank you for considering the Bowery Mission in your giving.
Yeah, that's so true. James, is there something that you wish you knew at the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, well, looking back, of course, there are many things that we wish we had known. Among them, to wear a mask, right, early on, so that we could be avoiding any illness at all, doing the social distancing. All these things we've learned along the way. As I mentioned earlier, we're so grateful that we haven't had any community spread. But as I also mentioned, here's something that I'm glad we didn't. We didn't think about really along the way. Our staff really weren't asking the question, should we be shutting down? Should we be closing our doors? Should we be just dealing with the folks who are already in our residential programs until they depart and not welcome new people in? And in fact, we have continued to welcome people into our programs all the way through this year. We figured out how to do that in a healthy and a safe way, with cohorting and isolation for those experiencing health symptoms, health screenings, all of that. And by doing that, over 120 people who were on the streets at the beginning of the pandemic have entered our residential programs. I'm so glad that we've been able to do that in the midst of a pandemic, and we never thought about doing anything differently.
I love that. Been doing it for almost 150 years. Why change, right? So I recognize the time now. It's 7:28. We're almost out of time. Many of you are asking, what's next? So if you want to stay updated, or if you want to get more stories like Clarabelle's, head online, www.bowery.org/email, sign up, and every month be prepared to be encouraged, inspired, and make sure you share it with someone as well. If you're able to, like James mentioned, right now, one of our greatest needs is financial. So head over to bowery.org/donate. James, can you share some examples of the impact that you can have from whatever you can give?
Yeah, I think it's very common for people to say, well, what will my small donation do? Will it really make a difference? And at the Bowery Mission, it does. We take your donation, leverage it with donated food, volunteer service, and a meal only costs us $1.59 to serve. $1.59 provides that meal that could be the door into many more things. $25 provides a night of emergency shelter for a man or a woman who has dinner and a hot shower and clean clothing and a comfortable mattress and breakfast in the morning and a glimmer of hope for what life could be. That's $25. And if you're able to give $320, you are supporting somebody in our residence for a week as that person works through the root causes of homelessness, because we know that it doesn't end with a meal or a shower or a set of clothing, that there's a lot to be worked on here. And the best place to do that is in community, in a supportive environment, with goals and with a path towards independence.
Absolutely. And, for all of you that need to know, as well as years winding down, remember the Bowery Mission is an accredited 501c3. So your gift may be tax deductible as well. I think we got to most of the questions today, but feel free, follow us on social at Bowery Mission, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. We are there. Continue to engage with us, ask questions, and share what we are doing together. This is only goodbye for now. We're going to have more of these in the future. So stay tuned for our next chat inside our red doors with James Winans again, and stay safe and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.